and then you ventured into the internet.
Well, it was almost by accident. I'd finished my second novel for Simon & Schuster. It was called Obsidian Sky, and I'd left Time Magazine after 13 years as a staff writer to finish that book. And the book had just come out. I was writing for the New York Times, Arts and Leisure in the magazine, trying to decide what to do next, and I ran into a young man named John Borthwick, who at a party, and he told me he was, actually we started out talking about music, because I had brought a CD of acid jazz, and he had brought some salsa music, and he's an Englishman, actually. And we were talking about music, and I said, what do you do when you're not listening to acid jazz? And he said, well, I build websites on the internet. And at that time, I was just savvy enough to know that that meant he was not in the construction business. And we started talking subsequently to that. He said, well, you know, he called me up and he said, let's start talking about, you know, how you might get involved in this. And one thing led to another, and eventually I became the editor of a website called Total New York, which launched almost 2 years ago, and was one of the very first websites to focus on an urban environment, interactive community with interviews, listings, going out guide, a database for restaurants, hotels, you name it.
All right. Well, let's talk about some of your, because that's your Total New York.
These are a couple of pages from Total New York, which has gotten lots of awards, and I'm not during this. Let's see. This is a recent cover of the website, or homepage, you would call it. Not sure what else is.
Yeah, can we see the next one? All right.
This is first person. This is a section that I contributed a lot of pieces to when I was editor, and still do. There's an interview with Sting, who had also done for the New York Times. Spalding Gray did a piece for us. This is part of the Sting feature, which had some great design. And he was great. He let us go into the studio while he was rehearsing for his world tour from Mercury Falling, and was very gracious and sat down and gave us an exclusive interview, and let us shoot digital film of him in rehearsal and so forth. So
that's beautiful.
This is the homepage of digitalcity.com on the World Wide Web, and that's what I'm involved in helping build out right now. We're building products for a number of cities that will roll out within the next year.
Okay, so Digital City purchased the Total New York.
Digital City bought the company which was called WP Studio, which produced Total New York, and another website called Ada, and one called The Spanker.
But you didn't actually have to know the technical side of it when you first developed that. You thought it was the creative, the idea to...
Yeah, I'm not a tech head. I've learned a lot about computers and what they can do, obviously. But my strengths are as a...
You mean there's hope for me?
There's hope for everyone. I mean, one of the good news about the internet is that, you know, you don't have to go to it. It'll come to you, and it'll get a lot easier. And as people discover the usefulness of it, I think people will be less wary of it. But for me, I'd used computers before. I wrote both of my novels on laptop computers. But the idea of an interconnected web of computers that span the globe was relatively new to me. But again, my strengths are as a storyteller, as an Imagineer, someone who can imagine things that don't yet exist, someone who loves to create in different media and likes to work with writers and designers, and actually some of the technical things that you can do on the internet, the two-way communication, the sense of community and personality is very rewarding. I'd say next to writing novels, it's one of the most creative things I've ever done.
Yeah, we're hearing a lot, though, these days about people who are misusing, you know, the internet and information like that. As a matter of fact, I heard from my friend in Washington who tells me that jobs are being cut back, but in the Justice Department they're increasing because lawyers are needed to be able to monitor. But do you think that type of monitoring system is needed?
No, I don't. I think people should monitor, you know, their own lives and their own tastes. You know, the thing about the internet is the internet is just a communications device. It's a distribution network, and content of different kinds flows over it, no different from the telephone. And, you know, all these kind of scandalous and sensational reports on something happening on the internet, you know, imagine if the next time there was a murder, the headline said, "Killer used telephone to communicate with accomplice." And that's basically what's happening to the internet. You know, people are blaming the medium. People, there are good people, there are bad people. There's great stuff on the internet, there's terrible stuff on the internet. If you listen to every phone conversation, you'd hear great things and bad things.
Right,
you'd hear
yeah.
people planning weddings and plotting murders. But nobody's blaming the telephone industry or saying that telephones have to be censored. So it's not quite as simple as that, but I think people need to think of this as just a tool that it can be used for good or bad in depending on the hands that it's in, like so many other things in our culture.